All right, we are live again. Welcome to Bitcoin class with Satoshi, everyone. And we are here with creator of Bitcoin, Dr. Craig Wright. And my name is Xiaohui Liu. I'm a founder and creator of Script. I'm a main student here. So what kind of a topic we are going to learn today, Doctor?
Okay, so we're going to cover extending addresses and making some new address forms. In this, what we want to look at is the creation of something simple that will link into sending transactions in a particular way, and also allow for an address that requires information to be given externally. So not just a linking of a key, but extending keys out, for instance.
Okay, so just put the terms out there. The address here, I kind of feel you kind of mean two things. The first one is just a normal Bitcoin address, which is derived from the private key. Another, you kind of mentioned like a address scheme.
So much more than that. Addresses right now, people are talking about just the standard use of a public key that is hidden in a particular way. But that's not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at anything that we can think about integrating, any methodology that anyone can use to deterministically say this individual, or even a hierarchy of keys from an individual.
Okay. So basically, it's one way to identify, I don't know, the recipient.
Yes.
Or Okay.
Because we can not only put addresses in there, but other information as well.
Okay.
All right. So let's go through a few basics, and I won't go into anything that will make this more secure, such as HMAC versus a hash or some similar thing like this.
Okay.
But I mean, a HMAC is just really something as simple as a secret and the message. I'm not actually going to go into a more complex version of how to make this properly work. You can research that individually or set up a function. But as an example, we can do the equivalent of HMAC in script anyway. So, but what we're going to look at first is, say we have Alice, our old friend Alice and Bob, and Alice and Bob have a public key, pub A, and pub B. So each of these now can have it individually certified.
Excuse me, can you lower it just a little bit so we can have the full view?
All right.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Better. Okay, great.
Can you see that? Is that clear enough?
Yes, yes.
All right. So by CA, what I mean is a certificate. So an example would be one of the certification authorities that are out there, a distributed version that we've been working on at nChain, or some sort of government authority that verifies your identity.
So it's like a PKI?
PKI is one form of certification authority scheme.
Okay.
We don't really care. For the purposes of what we're doing here, we don't care. But now, what we can do is, say we know that Bob has a CA of Bob certificate. So we know that Bob has a particular P Bob. Okay, so we know Bob has an ECDSA key, and it can be linked on his website. It can be used like we have with TLS on a domain or an individual, but we can have this as an individualized certificate, whether it's his site, whether it's individually for Bob.
Okay. So
Now,
it's similar to like a PKI. You got to be signed by some like a trusted third party, like a CA
yeah,
authority.
yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't. I mean, um, any root key should always be that way. All of this BS about sort of web of trust and whatever that
Mm-hmm.
people bring up in analyzing how you might have a distributed whatever, like a distributed
Okay.
event doesn't really matter. It
Okay.
could even be, it could be something like this, but you need
Mm.
some way of knowing the individual, because Alice has gone to Bob, who has gone to John, who has gone to, doesn't work. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, but
Yeah.
none of those,
PGP. Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't catch on
PGP,
someone.
unless you sign the thing personally, it's useless.
Okay.
There's no way of attesting who the individual is, and there's no overarching way of getting proof unless someone's put something on their website and then had it attested and then etc. So yes, you can do that, but to be secure, what we need is some methodology of knowing who the individuals are. Not
Okay.
very cypherpunk, don't care. It was never
Mm-hmm.
designed to be. Now, so from this, we now know we can trust uh, these individual keys, but we don't want to continuously sign using those. So a part of one of the schemes we had was PA and PB can, using a Diffie-hellman scheme, create a secret.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a standard number 42, as we put it, type exchange, where we have a deterministic secret that we now use, because if we have SPA equals, so SAPA gives us SBP, yes, I like that, less messy.
Mm.
SAPB SBPA. All right, so we know that we can set up an exchange where all the parties will be able to work out information. That
Mm-hmm.
means that now we can start doing things such as, or not limit to, setting up invoice numbers, purchase order numbers, or some schema that we can exchange between the different individuals, allowing them to send offline without having the same address all of the time.
Okay, just want to double check, make sure here the SASB is the secret key, right? For A and
Yes.
B.
So
Okay.
secret key for Alice and Bob that they don't ever share.
Okay.
And these values, because effectively SASB G is what we end up with, because PB and PA, same value, both can calculate. Now, this allows us to start forming hierarchies of keys, because what we can do from each of these is Alice and Bob now can send information to each other securely. So Alice knows that Bob has PB, but you don't want to send to that address. You don't want to create a Bitcoin address based on the same known key. I've continuously been saying that you don't reuse keys. This is one of the benefits. So P goes to PB1, goes to PB2, PB3, etc. So what we want to do is start forming hierarchies of addresses. So Alice should also do the same, and any change going back, so she can send there, but change can go to Alice 2, for instance. Now, the way we want to be able to do this is something like PB plus PA. S, where S is a secret, not the secret from A, SA, does not equal SB, but S, a shared secret that we are able to create between the two individuals.
Yeah, using the Diffie-hellman exchange earlier.
Correct. Now,
Okay.
if we have any format where we knowingly create these, we now have a methodology where we can have keys known by both parties. Now, S can be something like encrypted value of invoice. It can be um, the time, the date, a challenge, all sorts of fun things. Now, that means
Okay.
we can also set up.
May I ask one question here?
Yes.
Before you can. So here, okay, so it's a little bit different than I expected. I thought first you establish the common secret S,
Mm-hmm.
and then you
Yep.
derive something out of it. For example, invoice number, you can hash it, whatever. But here it's kind of opposite. You are using the derive the S from the invoice number. Is this?
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. We've got our Diffie-hellman S, and let's write it that better. So encrypted
Okay. You're
S,
using S. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
invoice.
I see.
Just gives us a little bit more privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Because now if we do something like AES or even an XOR or all sorts of different ways of doing it depending on how much privacy we want to introduce, then this value can be basically hidden between that and that so that only Bob and Alice will know it.
Okay. So another follow-up is,
Mm-hmm.
can you give one example how do you derive different keys? Say, for example, PB1, PB2, PB3, how they derive based on the kind of like a master key?
Purchase order 0001. Purchase order 0002. So we can have something such as S equals S plus or XOR 0001.
Okay.
We can have all sorts of different schemas. Now, that could be a bit more secure by making it hash of that invoice number.
Mm-hmm.
So that we don't need to put it out there, and it also gives us a bigger, messier number, or it can be a HMAC once again.
Mm-hmm.
In forming a HMAC and doing that for each of our keys, only the two parties can know what it is, and then they can also prove and have authenticity.
Mm-hmm. So basically for HMAC is just for to authenticate, one way to authenticate. So for people who may not have known HMAC, can you talk about a little bit what is HMAC and what does it do?
It's a secured or authenticated hash. So in that, only the two parties will be able to produce it, the people knowing the secret.
Okay.
So we have a hash plus a salt or another value such as a secret that enables an authenticated hash is one use. So that will allow you and I to validate the hash and know what it actually contains.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This could also be linked into other hash values or HMAC values in that we can also do external challenge response algorithms and external challenge tokens, the same way that we have Cerebos or Kerberos tokens that allow us to access Windows directory machines over a period of time. Similar types of authentication schemes can be built that link into this so that we could actually sell or record access on chain. So that could be linked into a single Satoshi exchange, gives you then access based on that access token that now provably for a period of time has access to the server before it
I
gets
see.
cut off.
Okay.
Equally, we can now have our hierarchy of addresses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that can also be extended out. So I'm going to get rid of Alice and Bob and assume that
Okay.
everyone knows who Alice and Bob are for the rest of this exercise.
Okay. That's a good challenge. Okay.
Because A, B, not too hard to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can also start having our Alice, Bob, X, and uh, exchanges where we build this into a masked function of the address. So P Bob 1 could now be what we're sending to from Alice 1 and Bob 1. The Bob 1 address is first of all based on a key that we derive using, say, invoice 1. Patent number 42 have some of the details of that that can be extended out into a HMAC. So I'm not going to go into writing it all out here, other than we have our derived key.
Okay. So here, what is a PAX? What
Now,
is X?
just I'll get to the X. Just
Okay.
first of all, that's our address. But we have PA1 is our
Mm-hmm.
public key of Alice number 1.
Okay.
And
That's derived earlier.
correct.
Okay.
So these are our derived Bob and Alice keys. Now, we have a value here, X. X can be any value that we want, a seed for a computation, a required unlock number, whatever. I'm not going into detail yet of what it is. All it is it's a value that we have to give to the transaction script.
To
So
unlock something?
correct.
Okay.
So
So like a
we
secret.
so we have already mask functions where we have something like value X. So we could have something like PB that mask with hash of X.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be able to spend the transaction, you expand this out and you have to be able to have a valid signature with this public key and a hash function.
Okay. So
So
for
we've already covered
example,
this in previous weeks.
mm-hmm. So I can regard as a PB, let's say PB1X as a
Mm-hmm,
function and takes the
mm-hmm,
PB1 and X
mm-hmm.
and do,
Yep,
for example, what you mentioned here. But this is just
yes.
one implementation. I could imagine
Mm-hmm,
it could be some other
mm.
combinations.
Yep.
Okay.
So we can now create payment address schemes based on all of this that can
Mm-hmm.
go into QR codes and they can go into specialized wallets so that people, rather than going, oh, we've got a 3 blah type address and thinking that's super innovative, we
Mm-hmm.
can now actually create new ways of doing all of this.
Okay.
So we can have addresses plus input data or addresses that are modified by input data, for instance, or even required signed values in the addresses.
Mm-hmm. So how would you imagine this kind of a almost like a generalized addressing scheme to be recognized by wallet? Do they
Mm-hmm.
encode it like this? Like for example, use a different prefix, like some prefix 2, 3, some maybe even for new ones like
Anything
4,
you
5.
want. I mean, this is just a standard that some wallet decides to take. That's
Okay.
it. So anything you want. Don't try and limit yourself yet. Form a
Mm-hmm.
standard and adhere to it.
Okay.
So where we have this is how Bitcoin addresses must work. That's how Bitcoin addresses must work in a particular implementation of a
I see.
particular script. That address says, I have this script format. That's it.
Yeah, it's like a template.
And I tried to tell a few people who got all upset and said I didn't understand Bitcoin that
Roger?
Roger, that the address format is not part of Bitcoin, as in the script. It is not part of the template. As you know, we add all this superfluous BS here and superfluous checksums there. Checksums are never sent to the script. They're basically stripped off and thrown into the garbage bin. So they go into this little garbage bin over here, and we never see them again. They go in with the stinking trash and the little flies around there.
Okay. Yeah, this definitely sounds like a technical doing. Yeah. So, and of course, to Roger.
Yep. So what we end up with is our little stinking garbage bin pile over there. Ends up with all this stuff, and that's it. Done. So we don't care is the simple answer. We do not care what we are going to be doing in our address pile. But we can now form these so that we have requirements that are given. So an example is if we have a hash and other function, we could do the hash of PB1, which is our normal type of function that we play with and add extra stuff on either side to, and have a bit there and a checksum. And we can now have extra information depending on what outcome may be there. So we can concatenate these together, and that could be like a 160-bit hash, and this over here can be a 160-bit of some other data, and then we all together do a 256-bit SHA hash of the whole lot. So it's a slightly longer, but that doesn't matter. Or we can even just put the two together and have a 320-bit long, because I mean, if we're talking about 520 anyway, who cares for many modern hashes? We could have two blocks of hashes that are required. Now, the reason I'm saying that is in our second address component, we can add other bits of information that can be defined to match off-chain calculations that have been done beforehand. So I could have sig A1, sig of x, a I of x. And all of these values can be mapped in a set of calculations that are sort of formed out now to give me information that I might want to use.
So this basically requires you to not only have the private key, but also requires you some other, I don't know, like a secret information you need both to unlock.
So I will start with something very simple that we can expand out on. So let's make that x and y. So sig x and sig y are two binary options. Alice signs two options here, which is if A occurs, no, let's probably make that something else because Alice is A. C occurs, then X, else Y. And these values are given in advance.
What value? C
The
and
X and
XY?
Y, and even the signature blocks, like the signed value, saying I attest to X or Y. That can be signed in advance, off-chain.
Okay.
Those bits of information now can be stored and incorporated into other calculations.
C can be any kind of like a condition here, right? It's not a
C can be
specific.
any condition. This can be an external oracle. This can be if this event occurs, the oracle releases one of these scenarios.
Okay.
It can be a hashed signature that has been verified. It can be all sorts of different off-chain calculations that people agree to. Sort of all sorts of funky things. Can be problems you want solved, things you do or don't know, because you can have limits over this number, under that number. All sorts of fun things can be put in, not just signature operations like I'm talking about here.
But the part that this if else, the whole thing, the statement is in script, right?
Not yet, no.
No, okay, not.
We will eventually put something in script. So all of this so far is off-chain in addresses.
Okay.
So, but we can add information that's going to be required. So an example is we can say the hash of that signature needs to be solved. Or we can say the hash of that signature needs to be solved. So someone can provide something that our wallet function will view differently than Bitcoin generally. So our wallet function can reject most Bitcoin transactions, but accept things signed as a sub-component that has nothing to do with on-chain transactions.
Okay.
So the recording of the transaction and the movement will still be part of Bitcoin. The ledger will flow the normal way, but we can put external requirements into Bitcoin transactions that have nothing to do with miners checking it or anything like this. And people will go, why do we want to do that? Because Bitcoin's not about a bunch of miners telling everyone what to do. It can be on or off chain. So now, remember we had a set of transactions with masking so that we could now put values into a script.
Yes.
So I can start constructing addresses that are going to have different values.
Okay, what does this mean? Different values?
This value X here, that we're going to be able to mask and do payments on, that we're giving in this external address function, can be handed to the script.
What does this? Okay, can you elaborate a little bit? So far, everything is off-chain, right? That's my understanding.
This is we're now handing it on-chain.
Okay.
Remember a few weeks ago, we talked about having masked values in transactions, allowing us to take external information and put them into a script.
Yes.
So we can now start combining our key plus external information.
Okay.
So
external one external example here will be the X. It can be external information. Okay.
Correct. Now, we can start tying this to functions such as hash of x and x, hash of x and x, and we can keep validating all of this in chains of transactions as well.
So I think here one technique you use here a lot is that the chain of hashes. You just keep hashing it. What is this usually used for? For example, you double hash x. I imagine you could even like a triple hash
just
it.
Proving order. It's just
order. Okay.
You don't gain any security by double, or you actually lose security the more you hash. Then there's collisions, unless you have other ways of going number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. So it's not a security function like some people believe. You double hash for other reasons.
For here, just to maintain order information.
Correct.
Okay.
So as an example, we could validate a prior calculation and then the next calculation. So we take our key hierarchy, and now we'll start thinking about how we move this from a transaction format that gets exchanged. So we have two parts of our transaction now. We have PBX gives us PB1 as a key plus X, or even hash of XC, right? That's in our address. So now this could match up into an address function, because we have to have sig B1, but we use pub B1 XOR X, or hash of X. Okay?
Okay.
In our calculation, we also duplicate X, and now we can do stuff with X.
Yes. Yeah, once you force whoever is spending to provide the correct X, then you can do anything. Yeah, now you have X. Right.
So we can pay based on different input values.
Okay.
So in our script here, we can use conditionals to base decisions based on if X equals 1, if X equals 2, if X is bigger than 10. And all of these can link into different functions that happen with our key.
Okay.
So our address function can also incorporate external information.
So just to be precise here, so what is can you define, okay, maybe use example, what is the address function? Is the whole thing, for example, PB1 XOR with hash of X?
I'm not going to define it, because it can be anything you want. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. There's no requirements for anything that has to be in script. It can be linked or not. So where I said it's external, this allows you to have multiple bits of information, including then conditionals in your subsequent script that you're paying to. The address function just sets up the type of payment sort of template that you're going to require.
Okay.
So
yeah, sounds like just like a locking script template to me.
Exactly.
Kind of.
It's just a simple way of defining what you need.
Okay.
So that template can have masked values, or it can have bits and pieces that will allow you to break up all of these functions and now require certain information added and certain information not.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, if you wanted to store extra information, we have string operations inside Bitcoin. So
Yes.
X or hash of X can be a forced template design.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have different length fields that things are broken into. Where we totally ignore all of this, and we ignore that field, and we ignore there, and ignore there, and we take a data mask now, and we say we want this value, this value, this value, this value, this value, that, and that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a nice complex script that evaluates all of this.
Yes.
And then that can be any variable information.
You mean
So,
in this example, we're like ignoring those parts because we're not using them.
Well, they can be filled out. Like if we're creating a form that someone can fill out and add information, we can have required information for the user, and then variable information that the user can add.
Okay. You mean variable length?
I could put, I mean, I could have a template that requires that I have a name field that is 0, 1. And that name field then has my name in binary of a certain length, so that I would be -- Crag.
Okay.
And then if I fill out my name as Crag, my next transaction will be a function of Crag. So I can keep filling out all of this going forward with other information. I can start making account structures that link. I can start making external information in templates. Now, just to make this a little bit more complex and to get you thinking, well, I'm not going to go into the details of all this, but remember, we can structure multiple inputs and outputs. The SIG hash flags allow us to change what we will and won't accept coming into a transaction and out. So for our specialized wallets that are viewing all of this information in Bitcoin, we can have our transaction effectively here acting as an input and output filter. So A, B, C, D, E, F. So, and the sort of values that we send can vary. So if A, if E plus B, if A, C, then etc.
Okay, so what is ABCD here? What is a circle? It's not a transaction, inputs, outputs that you are drawing. What does this graph and this diagram mean?
I'm talking about our transaction. So our different input address values can have different output values. So
ABC,
if I have
like,
X equals A, X equals B, etc., that allows me to differentially access how my transaction script works.
okay. So ABC, that possible value for the X.
Yeah, it could be even combinations, because remember, if A is larger than, so there could be two values that have been signed off, and together they add up to something else.
Mm-hmm.
So let me take that out of the way for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what I'm trying to get you to think about, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
is external information can be incorporated into the blockchain. You can do calculations on it, and you can
Yes.
build specialized external addresses and different functions on it. Too much effort has been put into um, these piffy little address functions I set up in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
They
Very
weren't
nice.
meant, yeah, they weren't meant to be
Standard
the only,
transaction. Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't meant to be the only way that you did Bitcoin. Unfortunately, uh, people have sat there and go, "Oh, wow!" But now think about this: if I'm going to have a website where I'm going to want to receive offline transactions,
Mm-hmm.
now all I need to do is know what the information is for the receipt of that sale. Correct?
Okay.
So if I'm Alice and I'm going to Bob's website,
Okay.
and Bob's offline,
Mm-hmm.
can I send Bob an invoice and have him paid?
So like with the technique you used earlier, maybe you only
Yeah.
not only require his
Mm-hmm.
signature, but also require he knows the receipt ID.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the receipt only he and me knows the receipt ID, right?
Yeah.
So there's no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So let's take something as simple as email, because everyone sits there and goes, "But Bob's offline. I can't send, and I'll send him something later." But no one wants to just send Bob money. This is the error everyone seems to be making on the other side, going, "Oh, well, what if Bob's offline?" Well, Bob isn't going to be completely, utterly offline with no email, no web server, no way of getting any information at all. And if he is, you're not going to send anything to him for one simple reason: he won't send you anything back. Think about it for a minute. If Bob is completely unable to take your order, what do you get as a benefit?
You just donate him some money. Okay.
Exactly. You send him money and go, "Well, why didn't you send me the goods?" Because, well, there are no goods to send. So it doesn't matter how you can update Bob. If you can send Bob a phone call or a fax or any ancient technology, send him a letter,
Mm-hmm.
then Bob will now know I have been paid. Bob
Okay.
doesn't get it at his standard address that everyone keeps using, even if it is a standard looking address. Bob gets it at the computed, "Alice has paid me at this key." I can now enter this value, and voila, everything works.
Mm.
So if we were to take, for instance, Bob's certified key and build an application to now add in a wallet, Bob types in a number, and Bob now has the new key, the new address,
Mm-hmm.
then he can add that. And even better would be if we can do it properly, um, which would be the way that Bitcoin should work with SPV. I can attach my transaction, and I could even potentially cut and paste or drop and drag that into the wallet. And
To
Bob,
do.
when he goes back online, can validate it.
Okay. That is what do you mean, like SPV style? You send
Yes,
Bob the transaction,
correct.
the whole transactions. Okay.
Yeah. And Bob can have all of the invoice data and all of the exchange information. So back in 910, when I was talking about how you can communicate uh, but not lose information and maintain privacy, this is what I was trying to get people to understand.
Mm.
You see now that I could even put a hash of my invoice so that I can prove Bob has received my invoice.
Okay.
For instance, I could have email Bob my purchase order, and Bob has to open my purchase order to get a number.
Okay.
Bob no longer has an argument that he didn't receive my purchase order.
Mm. So basically, when you pay him the like
Mm-hmm.
what you mentioned, the address scheme, or sometimes I call it
Mm-hmm.
like a login script has to contain some information saying it's almost like a acknowledgement saying, okay, you cannot get this secret value unless you have
Correct.
opened my order. So if I
Yep.
pay you, if you haven't ordered, you haven't
Mm-hmm.
opened the order, you couldn't unlock the coin, so you could not
Correct.
get paid.
Now, we can even take that further in that this is a single-use transaction. We're not going to expect any overlaps or collisions. The hash is secure enough. That's not an issue.
Yeah, let's not worry about the collision ever.
So, yeah, don't worry about any of that. But now, Alice will be sending to a completely unique address for Bob. If Alice doesn't send on chain, Bob doesn't have it. So say I sign a transaction and I send it to you. You get it not when I send it to the miners, but when you receive it.
Yes.
Now, if I give you something that calculates a new key, you now have a key that has never existed before and a transaction that has never existed before. Okay? If I give you the hash of a transaction, like a transaction ID, that has never been sent on chain.
Yes.
What I can now do is I can have you sign a refund, say a week from now. Now, I have the refund. You don't know what it is.
Yes. I think, yeah, that's
and you will never know what it is unless I spend the refund.
Yes.
You don't even know the address because all you've done is sign a hash. You have never seen the transaction.
Yes.
Now, think about this for a minute. People will say, that's terrible. But why is that terrible? You're signing with a key that has never been used to receive Bitcoin before.
Because it can be like, it's like I'm trying to spend my money, but I don't know who or how
that
you're
money
going.
isn't valid yet. So until I give you that and until you give it to the miners, it's not valid.
Yes, because it's not spending any UTXO yet.
Yeah, yet. So this is the problem with all of the trying to make it all on-chain Lightning stuff. Think of all these different use cases that are being lost. So now these are things we need to start developing as well. So I send you a transaction. You sign something back because unless the order comes through correctly, I want to get my money back. And we can build in all of this escrow functionality securely.
Agree. Yeah, so I think I've been public since we had like a few classes ago. I've been trying to get some examples of this so-called kind of like a yeah. Sometimes I call it chain transactions. Sometimes I call it like an off-chain transaction graph idea. Basically, some examples. So what would be, how would the people use this? Like how are they going to, I think a key piece is missing here, at least I haven't seen is, what kind of an offline or peer-to-peer exchange they are going to have? Is it like, it can be anything, it should be have some standard? I can text you, I can fax you,
yeah, anyone, I mean, anyone will set up their own standards. So SMTP is different to HTTP, is different to Gopher, is different,
Mhm.
etc.
Okay.
That's what we need. So every one of these new address functions will be a different template, a different use, a different defined type of exchange.
Hmm.
If that gives you an idea now.
Okay. So let's say, okay, just give this very concrete example, right? In the example you mentioned, for example, you are Bob, you are opening a online merchant, online shop. Maybe you are selling some, I don't know, T-shirt or something, or even like a DVD, online streaming. Alice, I want to purchase, let's say, some movie from you. And how's this process going to look like? I mean, ideally, if you're using Bitcoin the right way.
All right, so you could put down a small deposit that you
Okay.
can get back. That small deposit could be $5.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you watch the movie, we have an updating payment channel, and we exchange continuously. So, and transaction one, I have all of my $5, or even say $4.99 because of mucking around BS that I'm not going to give you a cent back. You can watch the movie or not. If you don't watch it, then you can take your $4.99 back, and I get a cent for my trouble. If you start watching it, you start paying me, and we can do an exchange where the amounts are now continuously updating and periodically going on chain to set and lock the amounts, but continuously updating, say every dollar they set, where I've watched a minute of the movie, I now have spent 10 cents. I don't know.
Okay,
And
so basically,
continuously, I change the amount that will come back to me and the amount that I can't get.
okay. So basically, it's almost like the Bob has to maintain a server. So whoever is going to buy is going to establish a channel, just for using this channel to do peer-to-peer transaction exchange.
Yeah.
Okay. So it can be anything. Yeah.
It can be anything. The same way that we have
HTTP,
web servers, HTTP, email, this sort of video streaming, anything.
Okay.
So all of this can be built in. Now, the way that would work is you would have a specialized transaction format for use in that video. But when it finishes, it could go back into pure Bitcoin sort of tokens. But then if I want to put it back into Amazon, I could put it into Amazon for the moment and move it around to different things in Amazon under an Amazon token format. And when I want to take it out, the same sort of thing. I could transfer it into US dollar tokens in the future. And then I could transfer it back to Amazon movie tokens and back into Bitcoin tokens.
So I think here for this kind of service to be practical, I think for now, I think one obstacle I've seen is because, I mean, we don't want it, but I think most of the stuff here nowadays, they're still denominated in fiat prices, right? But here we are lock up Bitcoins. And because it's volatile, at least in a foreseeable future, how are we going to make that happen? Unless you have some countries.
Well, if we're
to issue
talking about
tokens.
but again, if we're talking about micropayments, who cares?
Okay, so you can fluctuate, but because it's small amount, doesn't matter. So
exactly. In the future, I expect, following Tuvalu and a few other governments that are looking into this, it'll start small, but it'll grow, and then we'll be able to do atomic swaps and exchanges. And rather than people holding large amounts of Bitcoin in Bitcoin format, they'll hold, for instance, say a bunch of British pounds as cash. And when they want to pay for a service, they'll transfer it over to Bitcoin. and use it that day, and then even
Okay.
transfer it back. They'll hold small amounts. So
Okay.
that'll change over time, and the more it gets used, the less volatility.
Hmm.
But um, that's how it should grow. It should grow organically. And then I'll be able to move my money back, and I won't care about fluctuation because some days I'll make 5 cents, and other days I'll lose 5 cents.
Hmm.
And I
Cancel
mean, it's
out.
5 cents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll sit there going, I'm 5 cent richer this week.
Okay.
Whoop-de-doo-dah.
Yeah, you have to pay your VAT. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, so we won't even need to worry about AML or any aspects of recording the people that are using it for that small amount because it'll be under um, sort of $200 limits and not reportable. No one cares when you're using cash properly.
I see. So, okay, to sum it up, basically, uh, it's not it. If you use Bitcoin correctly, you almost never hold it in large sum. So basically, wherever you always use fiat, but whenever you want to add some,
Unless
such.
you're going to be a business. I
Okay.
mean, this is where people go wrong. It's not to hoodle. If I'm working in a field where I need a lot of a commodity, I will hold a commodity. If I'm a miller and I want to take wheat and turn it into grade one flour,
Hmm.
then I'm going to have enough wheat to take any fluctuations that'll affect my industry and hold it.
Hmm.
I don't care about holding wheat. I'm not there to dabble on the futures market. I'm there to produce from that wheat. And if I'm a company that makes tokens, or if I'm a company that transfers information using Bitcoin, I'm going to want to have an underlying base that I hold. If I
Okay.
want to create industries based on Bitcoin, then I should do it. But it will be businesses and merchants that keep a lot. The same way certain types of industries hold a lot of cash. So if you're a payday service, then you have to hold a lot of cash. Why?
Okay.
Because say every Thursday you go out in your vans and you pay people small amounts in Texas, and you hand low-paid workers cash. So
Okay.
you have to have large sums,
Mhm.
but the workers don't have large sums, and the other people don't have large sums. That's
So
where
they
people are
just
going
kind
wrong.
of like use Bitcoin on demand. Whenever
Yeah.
they need to access, for
Mm-hmm.
example, the streaming service, they just
Mm-hmm.
exchange
Correct.
on the on on the way, and then after they're down, they immediately get the fiat back. Is that how it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you'll just change into what you want. So right now, if you get too much cash, you go to a bank. Not too many of us use cash anymore, but when I was young, um, people would take bags of pennies in and change them.
Okay.
So you would always see the old lady who had $200 worth of pennies would come in there and be counting them out
Mm-hmm.
one by one and not letting them use the machine that would auto count it because,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's what old ladies do. And
Okay.
and yeah, you then shake it in and transfer it into different denominations, and or save it or do something with it. And the same thing should happen with Bitcoin.
Okay. So I have two concerns here. So one is, so it seems to me because of a volatility issue and there's no like at least for now tokenized fiat. So it's not going to be used for like a large value transfer, like buying a house or buying a car.
Oh, but it never was
What?
designed to. It's a micropayment system.
Okay. So that's
I
not
mean,
even the supposed
no,
use
that's
case.
not a use case. There are
Okay.
no benefits in Bitcoin for houses or cars.
Okay.
Bitcoin as a ledger, yes. Bitcoin as a house car payment system, no.
So Elon Musk is not right to sell Tesla using BTC.
Uh, Elon Musk is an idiot. Elon Musk isn't the guy behind Tesla. Elon Musk is the investor. Anyway, so it's very simple. It's a micropayment and web money system.
I think, yeah, that's probably get rid of my second concern is basically sometimes I have a let's say address scheme. I want to let's say I post a bounty. Whoever can solve my Sudoku problem or finish doing my homework, I will pay him like I say 1 Bitcoin. But I want to make sure I can always refund it back, right? Because otherwise, if nobody can solve it, my money is gone. So I always have a like a lock time, right? So that's because I was thinking maybe because I want to leave, let's say 1 day or 1 week for people to solve this problem. And then within this long term, right? It's not like I'm watching a movie, probably fast. And price volatility probably is okay. But
what you could do is every day have a new rolling transaction or something like this.
Spend the first thing.
Be different ways of doing that, but you could have different transactions, different advertised recoveries, and with a calculable address, someone could even come in there at that point, and as I was saying, negotiate now a refundable address. So I could go to your Sudoku thing and go, I'm going to solve this. Here's my my transaction, and here's where I'm going to try, and they could pay you a small amount, and you could then give a guarantee of whatever amount that you give to them, saying that, look, this amount is, if you solve it, you get 1 Bitcoin. Otherwise, I get it back in a week. You've got a week to solve it.
Okay. All right.
And none of that goes on chain. And that's the thing people are failing to understand. It doesn't need to all be on chain.
Yeah, I think I'm getting
on chain.
Yeah, it's pretty much the only time you want to go on chain is you want to get paid. So
settlement. You settle on chain.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Alrighty.
I think
a lot for you to go through, but start thinking about how we could integrate some of these address functions and scripts. And if we could make something that simplifies this as an API, you plug in these values and create your own. So everyone's running around madly doing tokens. How about address functions and things that we can plug into websites?
Yeah, that sounds at least to me more, at least intellectually more interesting.
Yeah. All right.
And practical. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I think
catch you next week.
Stop here. Okay. See you next week.
Okay.
Okay.
See you later.
Okay. See you.